think we're recording.
Are we recording? Is this thing on?
It's counting. It's counting. There's numbers.
Yes. Well, and they're going up, I'm assuming?
Yes.
As opposed to counting down to something.
Right. Now we're in the negative time. And wait, what? It's like unrecording. It's the anti-episode.
That's right.
Welcome back to another episode of Scouting Stuff.
Let's not talk about how long it's been because it's been a hot minute, I think.
It's been, a little
Or a hot hour. A hot several minutes.
quite some time. I mean,
yes.
Life, I am still Scouter Ken.
Yep.
Scouter Colin's just over there.
Yes. Sorry. Introductions such that they are.
So we're out of practice at this.
Yes. Right.
But sitting on the back deck tonight. It isn't currently raining.
Which is nice.
We'll see if that holds.
Although the rain is welcome.
Yes. I mean, I gather that the Heritage Festival didn't have a good time of it.
That was yesterday. I think the wind kind of socked it to them. Mm-hmm. There was some storm damage or something like that.
That's what I heard. So they didn't run today.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of the WJ when we were out.
Oh.
We were working on the waterfront WJ in England. And the tents blew across the lake, and there was all sorts of shenanigans.
Some unfortunate
Although
chaos.
even the SBJ we worked at, there was that too, right? Like there was a big wind and picked up all the carport tents and sent them flying across the lake. And
you weren't at CJ97, but we had that.
Yeah.
Same thing. A lot of the sub camp got blown down.
Yeah.
Not our tents, weirdly, but whatever.
Oh, maybe somebody knew where to stake them or how to stake them.
I think they were just set up in such a way that like they didn't catch the wind.
Sheltered by the trees or whatever.
No, it was pretty open, but just like we had them turned in a bit of a different direction than a lot of the other sites. So I think I've talked about that on some other episode. That was, when like all of a sudden it's like 2 a.m. and thunder's flashing around you, and then all of a sudden it's like someone's coming into my tent. What the? Oh, well, your tent doesn't exist anymore. Okay, I get that.
Yes. But all of a sudden the roof of the tent is now in my face.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
So, anyways, yes. But so you've been doing good?
I have. I just got back from a vacation, so I'm well rested, I would say.
Nice. East Coast, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
Strongly suggested if you can afford the time and it, in general, it is worthwhile to go and spend some time. I mean, you can run around all over Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, or you can vacation like I do. Yeah. And I go and find a spot that I like.
This seems nice.
Yeah. Do the trip once, run around, figure out what's nice, and then go and set up shop.
Yeah. Stay there.
Yeah. So, but it was great. Unplugged, disconnected from work and just the day-to-day life stuff.
Nice.
Was able to relax and have a good time.
Awesome. Air conditioner's kicking on. Oh well.
Background noise.
Yeah. I can filter out most of it. Yeah. Well, awesome.
And for you, just a lot of life stuff.
I guess. Summer's been actually like phenomenally busy. I mean, the last few months in general, I don't even know when the last time we did an episode was. It's been a while, but it's just been phenomenally difficult to schedule anything. Work's picking up, right? I mean, new role, putting a new department together, some new projects, particularly challenging projects in some cases. And then like this week again, just going completely gangbusters because I have a week to implement stuff.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, it's not that I can't do it, but it definitely, subtracts from the flexibility that it might otherwise have.
Spare time?
Yeah.
What is that?
And then, all of the other little sundry tasks that I might, take care of 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there.
Yeah.
Or I'm between meetings or whatever, all of a sudden that all just gets, that becomes the evening, and then, supper times and whatever the family's getting up to. And so, it's been hard to schedule. And then we've had we're usually like the people who go to other people's places. Yeah. But at least for like the first half of July, everybody was coming our way. Was that just based from out of town?
Was that just based on a time availability for you guys to be able to go places, or was that just because
we had planned actually to head out to the coast kind of the first, right at the tail end of June and into the first week of July.
Right.
And then, all of a sudden some of the people that we were going to visit out there were coming here. It's like, okay, well, I guess we'll hang out then. And y'all come see us.
Yeah.
And that was good, but it's just, it hasn't really ever happened before. So it's like, okay, well, first time for everything.
Retool and,
yeah. So it's weird to be the destination as opposed to, bound for somewhere.
Right.
But whatever. We're still going to try and get away a little bit later on in the month here.
Nice.
But got a balance between more things.
Yeah.
Ella's got...
I do hope it all works out for you.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Part of it's dependent on the weather and fires, and part of it's dependent on people's schedules. And
yeah.
So, yeah, it has been phenomenally busy. So I've I lapsed even on the Scouting 5 stuff. It took a while to, get a few. There was a gap. Oh. So whatever. I'm doing those a little bit again now. So that's good. But been a while since we've properly been in front of the mics.
Yes. So what would you like to talk about today?
Well,
or do you have a topic in mind?
I do actually, and it's the one that I pitched to you, I think, before you headed off to the Maritimes.
Yep.
Which is to say, and I mean, what ultimately prompted all of this was we elected a new council youth commissioner, and in an effort to boost engagement, she put out a call for submissions for a neckerchief design contest because they were looking for
a
new neckerchief for Northern Lights Council.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, I still had all my templates from doing the Proud Scouter Moment Necker, being on that committee, or doing the Kandersteg Necker,
right?
Doing that one essentially solo. So I just kind of reopened all the templates, started mixing and matching some stuff, and came up with, I thought it was a pretty sweet design. Evidently, so did NLC.
Oh.
I gather it's going to be the one they go with. They've asked me to touch up a couple of the hand-drawn designs that they received. They've identified 2 that are the runner-up designs.
Oh, okay.
So I've done a niceified version of one. I have to do the other one when I have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So, and then they actually also wanted a crest based on the badge design that I submitted. So I got to whip that up at some point too. But it's kind of cool to have a hand in shaping these kinds of designs, stuff that, goes to branding and image for the council.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with the design I cooked up. And all of this has got me thinking about just neckerchiefs in general. I mean, I've always made a big deal out of neckerchiefs.
Yep.
Even if I kind of let the rest of uniform discipline flag.
Yeah.
Unless it's specifically an event where we can't wear them.
Yeah.
And there's only a couple of those, archery and wall climbing.
Yeah.
Well, / rock climbing.
And there's good reasons for both. Solid safety cases for both of those.
Obvious reasons why you wouldn't wear them in those contexts. But otherwise, and I mean, so, yeah. So, given that caveat, but otherwise, even if I kind of don't insist on any other part of uniform discipline, I'll always ask the youth to wear their neckerchiefs for, a few reasons. I mean, one, it's the easiest way to identify who's, right? When you especially when you have larger events where there's multiple groups there, right? If you have a whole gaggle of beavers or cubs or scouts, well, color is a really really easy way. The color around their necks is an easy way to sort them out.
And I do have to admit that, from a neckerchief perspective, if you pick the right pairing of colors or whatever you do, it is easy to identify your people in a crowd.
Yep.
It's just,
I mean, to be fair, I have seen over the years duplicate neckers, but different groups just happen to pick the same color.
Yeah, well,
but
I suppose there is a limited amount of.
Well, less so now. I mean, traditionally, yeah, because traditionally you would have had the
primary colors and
or just all it would have been was color swatches, right? Whether it's 1 or 2 colors.
Yeah,
these days, and I mean some of the companies around here that'll do scout neckerchiefs still kind of hold to that. And basically nowadays the general selection is you can have 1, 2, or 3 colors as your border and then 1 or 2 colors as your inside. And it'll usually be a 50-50 split.
Right? Yep.
So, you can mix and match your colors a little bit, but broadly speaking, yeah, it's color, one flat color bordering another flat color is kind of the traditional nowadays neckerchief. But we are getting to the point where you can do screen print or dye sublimation prints. So you can get more complex designs. course, first you have to come up with the more complex designs, and that's a whole nother thing.
Yep. It's true.
But you can have a little bit more fun with those. The catch with those ones, I find, is like, whereas your traditional just like flat color bordering a flat color neckerchief, you can do that with just nice cotton, and so it folds very crisply. The dye sub prints, the other screen printing tends to have to be on like sort of a more like a poly blend.
Oh,
and
is that a harder to deal with?
It is not as crisp. It doesn't fold quite the same way.
So you might have to get the assist of a sewing machine and stitch the folds into.
Yeah, or like, I don't know, just like get your initial necker roll just perfect, and then leave it between like dictionaries for.
I was going to say put some weight on it, so to speak.
And just squish it for a week.
Yeah. Gone are encyclopedias, so you
can't it's not really a thing anymore. But find something.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, I've just kind of had neckerchiefs on the brain. And so I kind of was like, well, okay, why even do we wear neckerchiefs?
Yeah. What was the impetus of, I mean, there is a first aid purpose for a neckerchief, and the design of it too. It falls into that triangular bandage.
Bandage, sling. Yeah.
That's the sum total of my knowledge for a neckerchief.
That is certainly one of the various uses that we do teach.
Yeah. The practical use for it.
But, so, I mean, neckerchiefs are actually as old as the scouting movement. Like, they're discussed in Scouting for Boys. And they kind of the usage of them kind of predates scouting. The South African Constabulary, peacekeeping group that Baden-Powell commanded while overseas, included neckerchiefs.
Oh.
And the idea, I mean, he had a few ideas. And again, you can find this all in Scouting for Boys, and there's sketches of all of this, right? Like, he did notice the practicality, the first aid uses, whether it was bandage or a splint or a sling, protects your neck from sunburn, kind of, right? If you wear
you can modify it so that it can be practical in that regard.
But also symbolically, and he wrote, every troop has its own scarf color, and since the honor of your troop is bound up in the scarf, you must be careful to keep it clean and tidy. So right from the get-go, the idea was, well, twofold. You can kind of see two different things in there. One, the neckerchief is kind of seems to have like a bit of a pride of place in the uniform, right? Yep. But also distinct to the troop. Every troop has its own color.
Yep.
So kind of right from the get-go there was sort of that idea that a scout troop would be distinguished in some way by its neckerchief, and that, the proper care of the neckerchief was important to that. You don't want to let your neckerchief get too dirty. It's also worth noting that, at least initially, woggles were not a thing. The whole idea was that neckerchiefs would be tied in a knot to, and I quote, remind the scout of the scout slogan, do a good turn daily.
Okay.
And to be fair, actually, I mean, I do have some woggles on my neckerchief, but I don't use them for fastening.
No.
Like, it's fastened in a knot. And then
I think once we learn the
friendship knot.
Friendship knot, I think the woggle was kind of, I wouldn't say discarded, but it was used less by our group anyways.
It's an accessory more than I mean, these days I find, like, within our group that the woggle tends to get used more. And I mean, we still give it out as part of the investiture ceremony.
Of course.
But like, once you learn to tie a friendship knot, you kind of never go back. And I mean, people lose woggles, especially beavers, right? So then it's like, okay, well, here, let's tie this in a friendship knot for you. Because it's not like I carry 20 spare woggles, or even more than a couple, usually. To be fair, in Scouting for Boys, it does suggest retying the neckerchief every morning. I'll admit I don't do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure the one that I have is still tied in a knot, hanging nicely as part of my uniform in my closet, even though I don't wear it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in a nutshell, that's the history and the origin of the neckerchief, is that, it kind of comes out of, as many things do, about how scouting is organized, right? Out of sort of those non-military or paramilitary, in sort of the more academic sense of the term, right? Meaning, the unarmed organized groups that Baden-Powell oversaw to perform other tasks and kind of support the military defense, whether of Maf King or elsewhere, during the Boer Wars.
Yep.
Right. But he had all these little groups, often comprised of youth, that were supporting the military, but were not themselves military, but still had some kind of organization. And of course, he's drawing on his experience as a commander, as a military commander, to kind of come up with the organizational framework for these guys. But but even back then, neckerchiefs were kind of used to distinguish one unit from another within those support organizations. And obviously something he brought over into the scouting movement. And I mean, it's kind of weird because on the one hand, I think a lot of scouts around the world do place great pride on the neckerchief. Although weirdly, Scouts BSA de-emphasizes it, I find, a lot of the time. When I'm at their meetings, even when they're in full uniform, they don't usually incorporate a neckerchief unless it's like a big ceremony.
I wonder why that is.
Couldn't say for sure. But I mean, I guess too,
I wouldn't want to speculate, but I'm just kind of genuinely curious.
I guess in a way, the counterpoint to that would be to say that, by reserving it for the big ceremony, as part of your ceremonial dress rather than your workaday scouting dress, that is really placing a higher emphasis on it. And there's something to that. I mean, I prefer, even if I'm like wearing, like not my regular uniform, right? But like just a general scouting shirt of some kind. Yeah. Or even if, I've just thrown on, my last clean shirt at camp, which might not be a scouting shirt per se, I'm always going to throw on my neckerchief or multiple neckerchiefs, depending on the context.
Right.
Like I said, kind of at the outset, I think it is, and I mean, I think it's kind of there in Scouting for Boys too, is like, it is meant to be like the distinctive identifier of your troop. And it really is kind of where, in a way, sort of like the honor of the group is in some way, or the identity of the group is really in some way caught up on it and bound up in it. Because at the end of the day, in most Scout organizations around the world, if you're wearing the Scout uniform, whatever form that takes, whether it's like the dress uniform or the activity shirts that we have here, if you're in the official uniform, well, everybody's wearing the same uniform. All the beavers wear brown vests. All the scouts wear green shirts. All the leaders wear red shirts these days. Yeah. The adventurers are in blue. The cubs are in gray. That's in Canada, but, adapt the point to, whatever your own NSO does for colors. Y'all wearing the same uniform shirt, but if there's a big collection of you from different groups, you're all going to be out there in different neckerchiefs. Unless, it's like the 59th paired up with certain Irish troops I've met in the past. And then it just happens that we're both wearing green and orange. Yeah. Or orange and green, depending on which direction that goes. Yeah. Or like, there's a group here in Edmonton that uses dark blue with a red border. Right. Which is also the Middleton Scout group that I hung out with when I was over there. Yep. So, sometimes but in general, whatever, even if you're all turned out in the same dress otherwise, your necker will be distinct to your group. And I mean, you see that illustrated, you're talking about jamborees at kind of just in the banter there. And I mean, you really see that illustrated at jamborees. Everybody's there with, well, more so nowadays, because almost every national contingent will like devise its own necker in addition to, the fact that you're wearing your group necker.
I was going to say, up until the point that everyone gets the jamboree necker, and then all bets are off.
Yeah, well,
and then it's loading up on necker, right?
And I think we talked about that in the Candlestick debrief. But I mean, that is, and I know I've mentioned that before in like when we've discussed trading, right? Because badge trading is all well and good, and I don't mind badge trading at all. I'll happily play along if people want to trade badges. But I love neckerchief trading. Oh yeah, that is the thing. And it's funny because it was Scout Scarf Day a few days ago, August 1st. And so I didn't really head out into the wider world too much. I threw my neckerchief on for a bit when I did. Ella, volunteering over at the library, threw on like her Venturer shirt and her scarf. And then actually she had a friend come over for a sleepover. So friends also involved in scouting. And so when they decided to like go for a evening walk, her buddy was like, "Ah, shoot, I didn't bring my necker. It's Scout Scarf Day." And I'm just like, "Hang on, box,
Yeah,
there's like 50 neckers in here. Like, just pick a couple." But I mean, like I like going through that box because it's like, those are all the ones I've traded for over the years. I can still remember like the story behind most of them.
Robin made a duvet cover out of his.
Well, that's a good use for it.
His neckers.
That's all right.
Yeah, I thought that was actually very smart, and it gave him something to do. And
that's very clever.
He worked on sewing, and
I don't remember what event I was at, but at some event I was wearing 3 or 4 neckerchiefs, right? Because I like to, because I mean, I mostly just do it for the youth to see, right? Like I really, at the end of the day, I'm more than content to just wear the 59th neckerchief and be completely happy with that. Yeah. But I put on, because I have this big collection of neckers and because I can tell you the story behind most of them, I'll put the other ones on a lot of the time, because then, if the youth are like, "Oh, well, what's the deal with..."
Yeah, there's a bit of a conversation piece.
And then
right?
it's an opportunity to talk about scouting beyond just what our unit does, but just what our group does, right?
Yeah.
This is a global thing. Like, I got this one from someone in Switzerland. This one's from Ireland. This one's from Africa. And so it's cool to be able to share that. But yeah, at some point she quipped, "You're wearing enough neckers today?" Well, no, I'm not.
As a matter of fact,
just for that, every other event we do, I'm going to add a necker. I'm going to add one more. I got a whole box. I stopped eventually because it was actually getting a little bit heavy.
I was going to say it's either getting heavy or uncomfortable with like the heat.
16's about where my comfort level is.
Yeah.
Depending on which ones I pull out. I have a couple that are like double thick.
Yeah.
Ooh, that adds the weight.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just...
Call me out on wearing a necker.
Yeah, right. You do know who you're messing with.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're going to learn. But, but that was fun too, because, the rest of the youth in the scout group are like, "Oh, there's a different neckerchief this week. What's that one about?"
Yeah.
And we have the conversation again.
And it does. It gets the youth, because you're telling the stories. There's like, "Oh, well, we can do that." And then, it kind of spearheads that element of scouting that you might not otherwise.
And it does it in a way that really hammers home like the value and the importance of the neckerchief.
Yes.
So this next part is maybe going to make your make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, because this is all very tentative and down the road. But there's an outside chance that we might be changing the group necker.
Okay. Trying my best not to react.
Yeah, I was going to say.
This is me being like...
It's me dropping bombs over here. And you're just like, nope.
Okay. I mean, it's been around for...
50th anniversary was 2018.
Yeah, I was going to say, more than 50 years. So maybe it's time.
Well, I mean, I love the colors, right? I would let go of them only with a fight. But we are more or less merging with the Yellowbird group.
Oh, okay. I know they were trying to make a go of it by themselves. Like they had folded. I'm not sure.
Well, they kind of folded, came back, kind of went down again. Came back.
It's hard to maintain numbers and that kind of stuff if you don't have a critical mass.
Yeah, they got good youth numbers, but the volunteer mix is not where it needs to be for them.
Yeah, and that's a hard row to hoe, so to speak.
So we've been talking with them for the last 6 months, I think, just about, okay, how are we going to do this? And do we want to just float you some scouters? Because we do that already, right? Like, we have people who are leaders for us and then for the Rosalind group or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
So do we just want to float you leaders? Or do we need to actually merge and integrate?
Yeah.
And we're kind of heading in the second direction. And so there's been some discussion of do we want to change our number? Do we want to change our neckerchief? All these things. And I'm like, well, I mean, not really. Not really a fan. And then of course it's okay, our colors are green and orange. What colors are there? Yellow, red, and blue. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't clash at all.
Yeah. I thought it was brown and yellow at one point.
Maybe that would be easier to work with.
Ugh.
My Canva design
Not
is just
but
terrible.
like it seems like a lot of work
Yeah.
to figure that one out.
Yeah.
But
it's like, well, I could just do a rainbow. No, I'm not doing a rainbow.
Yeah.
Like this is not, no.
Unfortunately, being out of the program, right?
Yeah.
Like while I have opinions, they're not relevant.
So
such that they are.
I don't want to, but again, right? Like I'm very on the fence about this. I mean, I'm just one voice in the larger group committee. So,
yeah.
But, I don't think I'd really go willingly into giving up the green and orange because that has been the 59th forever.
Yeah, an argument can be made because the 59th historically had absorbed other scouting groups when they were folding. And we never changed the Necker in that regard, right? So,
and I did discuss that.
I mean, the fact that we're absorbing another or
an active group,
is
a bit of a different situation.
Is a different situation, and therefore, that kind of discussion can happen. But
it's like it's one thing, I guess, if you haven't been in the group that long, then you're just like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we could change colors. What's the big deal? And then, you get people who've been in the group for, well, as long as you or me, the history that goes back as far as that does. And it's like, okay, hold up. Because the neckerchief is like, it does have that kind of pride of place. Like,
there's an identity to, there is an identity to it, right? Like you had mentioned it. And
the honor of the troop. And that is part of the identity of the troop is in that neckerchief. And I mean, to be fair, I do know some groups that have changed their neckerchief colors.
Yeah.
The third used to have like a dark blue on light blue. Mm-hmm. And now they've gone with a different design. It's actually the same color as like the Oil Kings colors.
Oh, so, okay, yeah.
Kind of the black and the bright green and the white.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, sometimes groups do rebrand. We never have.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. We were suckers for tradition, I guess.
Yeah.
I wonder if you couldn't then you start getting into the weeds, so to speak. Mm-hmm. If you like make, let's just make a one-off Necker type for, to celebrate that, but then, and then, go back to the orange and green, and then everybody who is a part of that merger or whatever can wear that Necker, and it can be part of the, and then there's that story that goes along with it and some historic relevance, right? And then, just go back to the orange and green because that's how it is.
I've got all the design templates, so I've been like toying around with ways. It's like, how can I incorporate this? Or like the one that I had was like, okay, well, like what if, we had some other design that was like some single flat color that was like the core of like the base of the Necker. And then, and that was the same regardless. And then depending on whether you had come to us from Yellowbird or Greenfield, it was either green and orange border or red, yellow, blue border. But I can't make that look, I can't quite nail that one either. Right. Yeah. So I'm not, it's tricky.
I won't lie. I actually think that my idea is pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
It's like do the commemorative Necker. That way everybody has a story to tell and there's some history there. And if you then it's a limited edition trading Necker if you really want to get fancy with it.
Could do.
But I think at that point though it gives everybody a story, and it still keeps kind of an identity. Now, if you were going to do it, you could conceivably pay homage to those other groups that,
if we still remember what their colors were.
Well, that's true too.
Like what was Duggan? I don't even remember. Lansdowne, Aspen. I don't remember any of those.
No, me neither. But I'm just saying, like you could make it a larger thing.
Maybe, yeah. But again, like we'd really need to like get into the weeds of like figuring out that old stuff because it's not like there's like a heraldic registry, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's.
I don't think anyone at the council office would know.
No, goodness, no. Nobody's.
There's no history there. We would actually have to go into the community and just be like, hey, were you a member of this
Was
scout
your
group?
grandfather a member of this scout group? If
Yeah.
so,
Well, I guess, yeah, we're getting that old now, aren't we?
right? Like, that's how far back we're going, right? It's like your dad or your grandpa, like a member of this old scout group. And if so, like, what was the neckerchief color? Do you remember? Does he remember? Does anybody remember? Nobody? Shoot. But Scouts Canada has never really enforced like a register, right? It's not heraldry.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like...
Which is weird because, it's part of the uniform and but, even just a picture of the necker at the council office wouldn't be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
maybe old photographs exist. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, the only neckers in my collection that I don't know the full history of are like the ones from my dad. Right?
Oh, right.
Because and again, like they're just the standard bicolor, base with border. And there's some weird ones in there. There's like a black with a yellow border. There's a purple with an orange border. There's a few like that. And I'm sure they were just, different Alberta groups.
Yep.
Probably from them, Murnum and Two Hills and Elk Point and St. Paul.
Yeah.
But, could you tell me which ones was which? Oh, goodness, no. Nobody knows anymore. Lost time.
Yeah. I'd be hard-pressed to remember the neckers that were around when I was a youth. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, just the colors of... I know the 59th, obviously, but I was just saying, like, any of the other groups that were around. And that's why I said I think yellow and brown was at one point.
I think you're right.
I think it was either Duggan or it was Yellowbird, but I can't
remember.
I can't put my finger on it.
Yep.
So,
and I mean, yeah. I know some groups actually just wear like the national necker.
Interesting.
Yep. And then, I mean, obviously, like when you get your Wood Badge 2, you get your Gilwell necker.
Yeah.
So there's that. And some people will just default to wearing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in general, people in the group kind of wear the group neckerchief, and man, like it's a hard thing to give up when you've had it for like, well, literally in my case, most of my life.
Yeah.
But once you have had it even for a few years, like you kind of just have an affinity for it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, sometimes it's some neckerchiefs are just really pretty too, right? Like, I did not bring enough to Kandersteg. Did not have enough for the amount of trade that I could have achieved had I brought more. Right?
Yeah.
But, and I mean, like when you go to other events, it's kind of sometimes just like, oh, that is a really nice necker. I really wish I had something I could trade for. Mm-hmm. And I really wish you had an extra one you could trade to me. Mm-hmm. But none of these things is true right now. Live and learn. But yeah, like just the thought of like changing out the neckerchief, I'm not sure. I don't know. Those discussions have been dormant for a while, so maybe it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah. But we'll really see once it picks back up in September. Yeah. Where things want to go.
Yeah. Well, you have my suggestion, such that it is, man.
Yeah. I will say, neckerchiefs are bigger than you think.
Oh. Well.
Like in terms of physical size.
Okay.
I remember this because as we were going through the box.
I remember having a neckerchief that was just up to my chest. And being like,
what? So I remember when we were going through the box, we found it looked kind of like a 59th necker, but it was not the usual fabric.
Right.
And Ella's friend was like, what's this? And so we were headed out to a camp near Wainwright. And it was like a last minute thing, barely had any time to prepare, kind of a rush pack. And we forgot the neckerchiefs at home. Oh. And the camp organizers were very specific about you need to bring your neckerchief because that's how they're going to tell us apart.
Right.
So I called ahead to my wife's folks. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's like, do you have green fabric? Yeah. Do you have orange fabric? Yeah. Okay. I need 4 triangular pieces. Like I need 4 triangular neckerchiefs. I'll give you like the rough idea of how to design them. And then like, if you can just hammer them out on the sewing machine, they just need to last for the weekend. Doesn't need to be an amazing thing. And here we go. And I totally missed on the size. Oh. They were tiny. They were bow ties. Oops. Yeah, they were bow ties by the time we got them on. Oops. So yeah. So if you're curious, like neckerchiefs will usually kind of, there's a few different sizes, but
I do belong to the Husky Gentleman Club. So like the length of the necker actually has to be longer for me because it has to, but not that I wear one anymore.
Well,
but
I guess first off,
what are the dimensions of a necker?
Well, first off, let's review the general shape of the neckerchief.
Ah, yes.
Okay. Because it's kind of it's a really technically it's an isosceles triangle. But when I hear the word isosceles triangle, I usually think of like witch's hat cone, right? Like just sort of really narrow base and long diagonals.
Long tail, if you will.
It is an isosceles triangle because it is two sides of the same length and a third side of a different length.
Right.
Except that in this case, the base side is very, very wide. Mm-hmm. So for a small neckerchief, the base side is nearly a meter.
Wow.
For a small neckerchief, so for fitting like a beaver, the recommended base of a neckerchief is 93 centimeters at least. For people our size, 1.25 meters on the base.
Yeah.
And then the two diagonal sides for a small, like for a beaver, would be about 66 centimeters.
Okay.
And on a larger, 88. So the idea is it's an isosceles triangle, but where the two diagonal sides meet is also a right angle, which makes the other two angles 45 degrees for those of you who remember your trigonometry. But yeah, they are a lot bigger than you kind of, and I mean, like I was I was pretty much half. Like when I was quoting the things to my wife's mom, just like I think I guessed maybe 2 feet for like the base of the neckerchief. So it was teeny.
Yeah. It's just the smallest thing.
Is this a neckerchief for ants?
Yeah. Like you said, it's a bow tie.
It pretty much was. So yeah, they're big.
Yeah.
And then in terms of how you design them after that, I mean, at least in Canada, we don't have really any particular guidelines. No. As we mentioned earlier, if you go to, because there are companies around here that are like, Scout Scarf design companies.
Yeah.
And, like if you go to the website for the one that's based here, it's like I say, you get up to 3 borders, and then your base can be either a single color or like split in two colors.
Yeah. The 3 borders thing is a new one for me. I didn't realize that was an option.
I've seen that in a few places, and actually like the Proud Scouter Moment scarves that I designed technically has 5 borders.
Right.
It's really quite thin, but it's the 5 colors of the movement of the sections, right?
Right.
Brown for beavers, gray for cubs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I usually just do 1, sometimes 2, depending on things. Like the NLC design that I submitted just does the single red border.
Yeah, you just have the 1.
Although, to be fair, when I was templating that one initially, I did do a 2 border variant, with the idea being that if it became like the actual council neckerchief, well, then every group in the council could standardize on the neckerchief, and the border would become their group colors.
Ah, nice.
I don't think that idea is going to get carried off.
No, there's some things I would have to rework. Rework isn't the word, but like on the ordering side, you'd have to like front order and figure out what you're going to do. And
it definitely, and that's the nice thing about like having, and that's the nice thing about having a fairly simple necker, right? Like just single color with a single color border.
Yeah, a couple of different sizes.
Pretty cheap to order, right? Compared to other stuff, like it's pretty cheap to order, just like your basic traditional pattern necker.
It's the same thing with crest too, right? Like the fact that we only have 2 colors made our crest significantly cheaper to churn out,
right? Than doing a full color palette.
Yeah, if you're busting out multiple colors.
So yeah, like the typical neckerchief design sites that I see will, again, like I say, up to about 3 borders. Base, or like maybe the base is cut in half, or you can do like it's just a flat, right? There's no border. It's just a single. It can either be like a single color if you want to go all the way back to scouting for boys, or stuff like tartan, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which you don't see too much, but I think like the Gilwell neckers are kind of tartan. Or they
they have a tartan patch on them, but I think the necker itself is just brown.
Maybe. Yeah.
Or a shade of brown.
Yeah. I have seen a few tartan neckers over the years, and not just on the Scottish troops.
Right. Well, I would, if anywhere, I would expect it there, but.
Yeah. But, so, or like, and I mean, there's some other fabric patterns you can use. Not that I've, really seen anybody else use a different fabric pattern beyond tartan, but in theory, it would work. So.
Lumberjack plaid.
Or like, some sort of like, like the pattern work you see on like Ukrainian dancers' clothes.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. That maybe be a little bit too intricate. Sometimes it'd be a little bit out of
a little bit of work.
A little out of hand. Yeah, that ain't no simple pattern.
No.
So, yeah, broadly speaking, that is the neckerchief. It's kind of been something that Scouting has had since its inception.
Mm-hmm.
And right from the get-go, it was really intended to demarcate out different groups. And it was really intended to be sort of a point of pride for each group. And, so I would certainly encourage that, like myself, if you don't do anything else for uniform discipline in your group, do encourage the wearing of the neckerchief. Except, of course, in those activities where it is not allowed.
For obvious safety reasons.
Yes. And, I just to reiterate a point I know I made before, is do be open to the possibility of trading neckerchiefs or encouraging your youth to trade neckerchiefs when they do go to these multi-group events.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, that means that you have to have extra inventory because obviously they're going to need some traders in order to do trading. So I'm just in the habit now of if I'm going to, whether it's a Kandersteg or a Cabaret or it doesn't matter, I'll go talk to the quartermaster and be like, hey, I have a few extra neckers. What do we got? I need a few. And, maybe I'll get 5, maybe I'll get 10. I think I took 10 over to Switzerland.
Yeah.
Came back with none.
Yeah.
Except the one I'd been wearing the whole time. So, yeah, always take the trader neckers because and I mean, teach your youth to tie the friendship knot. That's the other thing that I really want to stress is teach your youth to tie the friendship knot. You can find all sorts of tutorials online, animated, static pictures. It's not that hard. And once you've got it, it's so easy to come back to. It's really easy to do well. But it's cool because I first learned it at WJ 2007, right? And I learned it in a necker trade.
Yep.
I traded one of my contingent neckers for a Swiss contingent necker.
And they tied it on your...
And the girl that I was trading with was like, here, I'll show you how to tie the friendship knot. And so she just tied it right around the neck. And it's just it's the coolest thing, right? To be able to not only just trade a neckerchief with someone, but then add to the story a little bit, but actually let's tie the friendship knot, right? So there you go. And it's just this nice outward sign of this little relationship that you've created.
Yeah. That's neat.
So there is that. Neckerchiefs. If your group doesn't have one, you should design one. And
apparently they're not that hard.
Or
they can be. They can be as hard as you want to make them, but they can also
be as intricate or as complicated as you want them to be. But they can also be simple.
Yeah.
It's actually, and I mean, I actually really liked our CYC doing the neckerchief design competition because it is good to solicit that input, right? It would be easy enough to just be like, this is the one we're using, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
But it's nice to actually put it out there and take in all of these submissions, and
people will have ideas.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
It's good to solicit for that kind of information. And,
and at some point, I'll put enough aside that I can just order a big block, just drop $1,000 on just a big block of Scouting stuff neckerchiefs. But not right now. Too many other things.
Not at the moment.
Too many other things to pay for.
Yeah.
Walls and paint and
home renos,
windows,
and things of that nature.
Trips to see family.
Yes.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I'm trying to think. Do I have anything? Let me just quickly go to the email here because I might have a couple of things just kind of lurking in the background that
we get
Scouting stuff. What do I got here?
The other one was the last thing we got on the old Facebook feed is May 19th.
Well, that's okay. But I do have a little note from John, who dropped a note on Buy Me a Coffee, which is one of the places that I repost episodes.
Nice.
And he says, thanks for the podcast. I hope you can find a way to produce more of them. And, well, John, I've released at least 2 Scouting 5 episodes since you said that. And this episode is going to be coming out in the next little bit here. So I'm going to try to keep that going.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
So thanks for that.
Just out of curiosity.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if I don't have any shout outs myself.
I don't either. Apart from John.
Yeah, apart from John. Of which we appreciate. But there might be other people who listen to the podcast, long-time listener, first-time caller kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
How would they go about getting in touch with us?
Well,
Are there ways?
There are ways.
Do we have ways of...
We have ways of letting you contact us.
Are we good like that?
We are. We are not the baddies. So yeah, email seems to be kind of the mainstay for everybody. scoutingstuffpodcast@gmail.com or outlook.com. Not picky. There's also the contact form on the website, which goes to one of those email addresses. Any of those are good. While you're at the website, of course, you can also find like a page to subscribe to the podcast, and there's also a place where you can leave reviews. It'll link you to either like iTunes or Podchaser, which also accept reviews. The website itself just accepts reviews too, so that's an option for you as well. And there's the voice message thing, which I guess nobody cares about. But
well, I mean, we don't get voice messages.
Yeah. How would we know?
Because nobody seems to use that feature.
Yeah.
I mean,
how would we know whether people care or not? Except by their remarkable inaction on this.
Yes, we could just assume that they care because they don't use the feature.
Exactly. That's where I was going with that.
Apathy.
I think. Relatedly, Discord.
Yes.
And of course, all the different socials. Well, I've kind of pared back some of them, but like Twitter, Insta, Snap, Facebook, whatever your flavor is.
Whatever you're feeling.
Yeah. But yeah, I just, get in touch. Doesn't matter how.
Nice.
I'll pick it up. We'll figure it out.
Question for you.
All right.
Now that we've got that, I got another question for you.
Oh, okay. Go on.
We were being picked up on Scouting Radio.
Well, they've just kind of...
Have they rebranded and there's something else?
Scouting Radio doesn't really exist as a thing anymore. It's like the one Scouting something or other. I don't know if they rebroadcast our content or not anymore. But their whole focus has shifted over the years.
Okay. And so we might
not know if Justin's involved anymore.
Well.
So, I mean, if you are Justin, cool. Hi. Drop me a line. Let me know where things are at.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's all good.
I think that's it for me.
All right. Well,
is that it for you?
Yeah. Oh. Well, thank you. Good to see you again, sir. Even for a short little bit.
Yep.
Thank you out there for listening. And until next time, be prepared.